Well, hello. Today I want to read you this story. It's called Inside the Worm's Hole. And the reason I chose this book today is because earlier today I was out in the garden. And as I was digging around, planting some seeds, I found a lot of worms. And so I thought it'd be fun to share this story um, and let you learn a little bit about worms. What is in that hole? It is a cool summer night in a vegetable garden. Suddenly, an earthworm wriggles out of the dirt through a tiny hole in the ground. With its tail end still in the soil, the worm searches for food nearby. Before sunrise, the wiggly creature will return to its underground home. Moist homes. Earthworms spend most of their lives in cool, damp soil. They stay underground during the day to keep away from the hot sun. If their skin dries out, they will die. At night, however, it's cool enough for the worms to leave their hidden homes. And I love that little map. All the yellow places on the map is where earthworms live. Moving forward. As a worm moves through the ground, it makes tunnels. Although the worm's body is soft, it can still push itself through the soil. The worm crawls by first stretching out the front part of its body. Then it pulls its tail end forward. Tiny hairs on the worm's skin, called setae, grab the dirt to help the worm move forward. Breaking up soil. As a worm crawls underground, its long body breaks up the soil. Its body also makes tiny holes in the dirt. Air and rainwater travel through these holes to reach the roots of plants. The roots take in air and water that plants need to grow. So the worm actually helps the plant grow. Eating along the way. A worm finds food as it moves through the dirt. It eats soil and tiny pieces of dead plants. The food the earthworm eats passes through its body. Then the food comes out of the worm's tail end as droppings or castings. So if you'll notice in the picture on the right, there are a bunch of castings, and those are actually really good for the garden. Worm droppings. A worm's castings are filled with nutrients. The nutrients come from the different plant parts that the worm ate. Castings make soil rich and healthy. They help the plants that live around a worm's hole grow bigger and taller. Danger above and below. Many different animals, such as toads, snakes, and skunks, feed on worms. A hungry bird will try to tug a worm out of its hole to eat it. However, pulling the slender creature out of the ground isn't so easy. A worm uses its setae to hold itself firmly in place. Here's a picture of a mole. Moles like to eat worms too. Laying eggs. In the spring, earthworms find mates so they can have babies. After mating, each worm forms a cocoon around its body. Up to 6 eggs slip out of the worm's body and into the cocoon. Later, the entire cocoon falls off the worm's body. One year when we had worms in our classroom, we had a worm habitat, and we got to see this. It was really cool. We got to see baby worms. Eat room to grow. After about 3 weeks, the eggs inside a cocoon hatch. Each baby is less than 1 inch, so not very long, and it looks like a piece of thread. Although they're tiny, the babies can dig their own holes without their parents' help. It can take up to a year before worms are fully grown. All the while, they'll still be wiggling their way through the soil. So it says, be a worm scientist, and you can do this if you ask your parents and get their permission. It says, imagine you are a scientist who studies earthworms. Write a report about the worm's activities above and below the ground. And some things you can do is we're going to be getting some rain over the next few days. And if it's dry for a little bit, you can go out there and just use a little tiny shovel and dig a little hole in the ground, and you will find a lot of worms. So send me a picture if you find some. Thanks for listening.